violence on campus, anti-Semitism on campus, cooperation with the Chinese Communist Party. So they're going to have to go into court and argue that Harvard needs to have this canceled because of cooperation with Chinese Communist Party. This is obviously going to be so difficult, if not impossible, for them to justify this in court because they are not doing this with any of the processes. The fact is, the universities relied on the eligibility requirements when they got certified. And as long as they are still in compliance, they should still be able to be certified. Kristi Noem, in her letter, she points out it is a privilege and not a right. Well, it is true. It's not a constitutional right to receive international students. But the fact is, the university relied on the program eligibilities when they literally structured their entire curriculum and program and what students they were going to accept from where. They relied on it. And that reliance is something that they will bring into court as part of their claim. This is a violation of due process. They're not following their own compliance regulations. This is arbitrary. This is capricious. All of the same arguments that we've seen in litigation against the Trump actions, because again, they're not following the process. So these are not difficult to get an injunction. Most likely they are going to get an injunction that will pause this. But in the meantime, right? In the meantime, all of these students, if you have, offers just went out for the fall, right? So you're a student, you just got an offer to go to Harvard and you live in a foreign country. What do you do? Are you going to accept that offer and reject another school? Because Harvard is competing with elites of the elites. That student, I'm sure, got into more than one school. So that student is going to have to decide whether or not to accept an offer from Harvard and be at the mercy of judges in our very slow system, or go someplace else, right? Where they know that they're not in the middle of litigation. So this, no matter even if Harvard ultimately wins, which it seems like based on all the facts we've seen, definitely they will because of the way Trump did it. But it's going to hurt them nonetheless. And this is why Trump does it. He does it because he tries to scare other universities from following and obeying in advance so they don't get dragged as Harvard is. But let's take a listen to Kristi Noem, because she doesn't even try to hide the fact of what she's actually going after. Because the fact is they tried to request information from Harvard and they said they didn't receive the information. And of course, colleges know how to cooperate with the government regarding the compliance and information needed. They do this for years. This is part of, the process. But Kristi Noem doesn't even try to hide that the information they were asking for was personal sensitive information that was way outside the bounds of just determining whether or not Harvard was in compliance with the certification. Take a listen.
As you mentioned, 18% of Harvard's freshman class this year are foreign. They're foreigners here on student visas. What happens? Where do they go now? What do they do?
Yeah, we have given Harvard multiple opportunities to give us the documentation that we've requested to conduct oversight. We've asked them for the backgrounds on students that attend their university, their criminal activity on campus, off of campus, any video or audio footage they have of this violent activity, and they have just simply not complied. This is something that they need to do in order to comply with this program as it was established. And so, unfortunately, all of their foreign students will face the consequences of Harvard's lack of protecting the individuals that go there. So 27% of their students are foreign students, and they will have to find some other university to go to. And hopefully they find one that cares about them and provides a safe environment.
So Kristi Noem, right there when she says they're just going to have to find another university to go to, knows that is the exact goal of this mission, is just to make it more difficult for Harvard to recruit and retain foreign students. And secondly, when she talks about what they were actually asking for, video footage, she was essentially asking Harvard to spy on their students and send that footage to the government. The most big brother thing you can think of. And if Harvard had said yes, then they would be known as a university that was spying on their students. I can think of no better way to get students not to come to your university. So they were kind of in a rock and a hard place because obviously, there would be even litigation against them by students if they start collecting footage and sending it off, and then be known as cooperating with spying on their students with the government. So of course they were going to not be able to give Kristi Noem what they wanted, which is why Kristi Noem asked for it, because they knew most likely Harvard was going to say no, and then they were going to use this as a pretext to revoke their certification. So it all becomes always circular. You ask the most outlandish thing that you know that they're not going to be able to say yes to, and then you use it as a reason to revoke. But that is when you don't have a law. And we know Kristi Noem, right? She was in front of Congress. She just talked about how she didn't know what habeas corpus was. She doesn't really seem to have probably consulted with a lawyer, didn't care what a lawyer had to say or a legal opinion. So this will be ultimately paused or stopped in court, at least based on what facts we're seeing right now. And her interview will certainly be used as evidence if the lawyers in front of them now try to argue, oh, Harvard didn't have the resources, they didn't have the right curriculum, right? They lied in their certification or anything like that, which, I mean, if Harvard doesn't have the right curriculum, there's pretty much probably no college that would have the right resources to comply with it. But we've seen that in the past. We've seen the Department of Justice attorney go in and say something that was a complete opposite of what Trump or his cabinet heads were saying in the media. So Kristi Noem is boxed in by being on the record of saying they were asking for footage. And that footage is certainly, not going to be a requirement for certification, because if it were, then this would be something universities would be doing all along, right? Because this is not a new certification. This is not a new program. Harvard and many other universities have applied and been renewed for many years. So this is a new request for them to ask to spy on their students. This is a major escalation of freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. We see DOJ trying to get personal information with Social Security. And then this is another way of trying to get personal information with the students. So the latest showdown with Harvard, we will very likely see a lawsuit to try to stop this. And in the meantime, the fallout of what kind of students stay by them and where they go from there. So definitely more to come on this story. My name is Dina Dahl with the Midas Touch Network. Be sure to free subscribe so you'll get all the updates.
Love this video? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MidasTouch and help us blow past 1 million followers.